Welcome to my presentation. My name is Michelle Brown and today I will be discussing the subject of culture and identity. Before we address the question of how education might mediate difference and dominance, I'd like to discuss what difference and dominance mean. I refer to John Austin's online lecture of difference and conclude that difference is relational. It involves the relationship of at least two parties being compared, each person with different ideas or culture and beliefs. The Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary has a good definition of dominance. It describes dominance to mean to have control or a lot of influence over things, to be the highest in place with power. With this in mind, how might education mediate difference and dominance? Education is in a position of authority, so we can, as educators, influence students. We can provide an inclusive, positive learning environment, including lessons that teach diversity and what it means to have different cultures, skills and knowledge in the classroom. We can discuss the benefits of difference and how this helps us learn in fun and engaging ways. Also, we can ensure productive work from students by setting boundaries and establishing rules with the students, involving them in the process to encourage respect and value of student ideas. The issue I will be discussing is multicultural education. I accessed this article from the internet, Australian School Curriculum to Force Acceptance of Multiculturalism. The article's title shows an example of dominance. This portrays a negative approach of trying to fix a problem in society. We cannot force acceptance. We can nurture people so they can come to the conclusion to accept difference and diversity to be a better way to live. The issue of multicultural education has come about because of the shift in our society with an increasing number of diverse groups of people born in, moving to and living in Australia. I refer to Chapter 9, page 120 of the textbook, Searching for Australian Identities. Alberts and Milner have argued the exercise of explaining the national culture is impossible because it's full of contradictions, even within occurrences of commonality. Moreover, the terms of reference of what it is to be Australian is deeply politicalised and increasingly so in a globalising world. In Chapter 10, page 127 of the textbook, Australian Identities in a Globalised World, this section says that we have an environment where exposure to global markets, cultures and communities is readily accessible. But just as cultures and values are mingled, so are identities. So what does multicultural education mean to students? I refer to the article I've selected and agree that the first issue that needs to be addressed is the complexity of what culture is, and it needs to be better understood. We as citizens all need to understand and appreciate the value of other cultures, working to build a stronger, fairer nation through social inclusion. The aim of this is to help students become culturally competent in a globalised world. This links in well with the ideas mentioned in the online lecture Race, Our Most Dangerous Myth, presented by John Austin. When the subject of multicultural education is raised in schools, there are many things to consider. Each student will fit somewhere into a category of race, ethnicity, gender, class and belief system. When teaching in the classroom, learning styles and personality traits will be influenced by these factors. We need to be mindful to prepare appropriate teaching methods to suit a wide range of students so we can attain high learning outcomes for students. Family background, including values and morals, biological factors and family support will influence student learning experiences, whether they are good or bad. In the lecture, Ethnic Diasporic Identities, it refers to Australia as a multicultural community. We belong together, even though we are not all the same. The issue of multicultural society touches directly on notions of difference in the social context, and it connects to national and community identity. Even though there is lots of people from a wide range of backgrounds, we all call Australia home. The event as curriculum. Curriculum is the content, what we are here to teach, and the goals we aim for the students to achieve. The first part of the process would be to plan and decide on the learning outcomes. I would note down the goals and methods of how I would achieve them. Using multicultural education as curriculum, I would focus on preparing children to gain the ability to be better informed about different cultures, so they could function well in a diverse society. I would encourage children and tell them the reasons why we need to learn about different cultures and the value in difference and diversity. I believe it is an imperative part of student learning to teach social inclusion as part of this topic. To include an identity component would be part of organising the lesson as well. I would arrange for students to identify themselves by making ID labels, then describe the benefits of how it makes life interesting with everyone having similarities and a vast range of differences. Let's now look at answering these questions. How you might use the event as the content of an educative experience. I would discuss with the students about the world in which we live, how we fit in, who belongs, and the need to appreciate difference and diversity. I would explain what does multicultural mean, how our society has changed, and how Australia is seen today. How to teach this topic. I would begin by announcing a special multicultural day in the classroom, where each student is included and shares part of their culture by setting up a learning station for each place. I would have group rotations so every student could experience and learn about each culture, including art and craft activities to do. Music and clothing could be included as well. I would arrange for students to make up their own ID labels, identifying themselves as they choose, using their name, where they live, language spoken, where they come from, and their interests. I would make mini tickets for students to collect, so after each visit to the tables, they could get a stamp from where they visited. At the end of the day, we could talk about what they learned at each station. How do we address issues? Let's begin by looking at this question. How do we assist learners deepen their understanding of difference and community identities? I would prepare a positive experience for students at school. Then I would teach about community identities. Community identities are formed by a group of people with common interests and goals, helpful as we learn our place in the social dynamic, opportunities for a sense of belonging to a group, a platform for learning from experiences, whether good or bad. In the online lecture, National Identities, presented by Andrew Hickey, Gurux of 2004, suggests in the community we are given roadmaps. These implicit markers presented in our communities function as public pedagogy, as they have an education purpose. It is where you learn how to be socially, by the things that are around you. Social experiences at school are very important as they teach students behavioural expectations required of them so that they can learn how to fit into society. The best way to deepen student understanding in relation to difference and community identity would be to provide an opportunity for the students to experience it for themselves. For example, I would start by preparing an activity in class with forming groups of students that had similar likes and dislikes. I would then demonstrate a specific example of an issue that could arise because of difference between them. Afterwards, discuss the possible reactions and what they would do or say to resolve the problem. As a teacher, it's important to model problem-solving techniques by using appropriate speech, compromise and negotiation skills to assist students to resolve issues themselves. My focus for the students would be to get them thinking about what are the solutions to problems or issues that could arise, and what are their choices in how they respond. What is also important to teach is how to be tolerant of others with limits. Students need to learn about attitudes and how that affects how they live and experience school, whether it be good or bad. This lesson provides students with life skills so they can fit into our community. Critical implications. With a variety of identity locations and senses of self, there are bound to be problems that arise. The most important goal to combat potential problems would be to teach students how to be tolerant and accepting of each other. Students' class location, whether positioned high, middle or low, will affect the dynamic of the classroom. How many boys and girls in the class and personality types will also contribute to the classroom environment. Where students come from, their morals, values and beliefs will also be part of the social component of the classroom. A good tool to use would be to set up a profile on each student and identify individual needs. Example, preferred learning styles and teaching methods they respond well to. Students coming from a high class area joined with students coming from low socio-economic class could bring potential conflicts, so this should be considered. Family backgrounds and lifestyle will affect how students socialise with others. Gender and personality traits need to be taken into account to understand girls and boys engage in the classroom differently. There are certain things that appeal to a particular sex and personality type. Race and cultures will affect how the students engage in activities due to the influence of different morals, values and standards of work. All these factors will contribute to behaviours and attitudes of students and can be a challenge for teachers to manage such diverse needs. How to reduce discrimination. How do we overcome disadvantage and marginalisation of groups at school and in the community? I suggest we teach through specific education programs to explain difference and diversity and how to live harmoniously in our multicultural society. I refer to the online lecture Race, Our Most Dangerous Myth, presented by John Austin. He mentions the construction of the other is done out of ignorance and fear of the unknown. This influences the mistaken beliefs about people because of their skin colour, body shape or other characteristics. They create stereotypes and assumptions of people from different parts of the world into archetypal groups. There is a biological and environmental components that influence the way people behave and interact with others. The challenge is to try to improve the students' views on difference and show acceptance of various groups of people in society and that it's okay to be different. To understand the cause of how discrimination and marginalisation begins is the answer to finding out what we are dealing with and finding the best ways to reduce them. Because of ignorance and fear instilled in the character of someone, this leads to discrimination and marginalisation of groups. Providing opportunities for positive experiences rather than negative ones is very important in social situations at school. We cannot force our ideas and opinions onto students, rather we gently show them a better way, a way that makes them feel good about themselves. If teachers do not continue to break the cycle of discrimination, who will? As a teacher, it is a social role, and that's why it's so important to ensure that our own bias and judgments do not get in the way of becoming an effective teacher and reaching all students no matter what their background. Inclusive education programs such as providing equal opportunities to students to participate in extracurricular activities such as music, arts and sports. Encouraging individuality and freedom of expression and promoting a positive team environment is very important. When there is discrimination at school, it's important to provide students and teachers with workable strategies to manage these problems so they can grow into well-adjusted and resilient adults.